Who are the best 5 rookies in the Summer League, and how many do we think will keep it up into the regular season? Find out next on Locked On NBA Big Board. Hello and welcome into Locked On NBA Big Board. I'm Leif Thulin, joined by Mavs Draft, Richard Stayman, the man, the myth, the legend, just moved across the country, and he posts more scouting reports than anyone I know. And we talk hoops quite frequently, both on and off the air, but I'm excited to be back on a pod with you, Richard. And we got a fun topic. The Summer League's a time to evaluate and say, like, hey, did we get these right? And sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's fun to evaluate nonetheless because you feel smarter, you feel stupid, and at least there's something substantive. So we're going to talk about the guys that we think are playing the best right now, and then prognosticate a little bit as us draft geeks do, trying to figure out, are they likely to be redrafted there? Before we dive in, though, I want to make sure we tell you guys that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But all this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, daily. There's something in it for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Richard. So I teased it there. We're talking about the best guys. So not all these guys are going to end up being the best in the rookie teams and make all the rookie teams. But we're also going to touch on that, talking about which guys do we think have the best chances of being on the all rookie teams. But I'll turn the floor over to you. Which rookie has impressed you the very most in the Summer League, it could be from the California Classic, the Salt Lake Summer League, and of course Vegas, which is the one that's still going on now?
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like not to say someone like Stephon Castle or Reed Sheppard. So probably one of those two. I also would say big shout out to Matas Buzelis. I feel like Matas looked really good. Like maybe it's because I liked Reed Sheppard and Stephon Castle a lot more than I did Buzelis coming into the draft. But I mean, Buzelis has been just really good. I felt like, I know he wasn't that efficient, but I feel like I feel like a lot of the flashes he had on the defensive end were real, and some of those scoring flashes seem pretty legit. So at the minimum, it makes you confident in his game and his upside. At least I think he's been one of the more impressive ones, and I didn't expect to say that going in. And also Kel'el Ware. I mean, he's somebody who, I talked tons on this podcast why I was low on him. All of it seems to just be gone. I'm shocked.
Yeah, I think you nailed 4 of the guys that are locks right here. Castle, I ended up with number 1 on my pre-draft big board, so he's the guy that I feel like, oh yeah, I got that right the most on, which is a rewarding feeling, but also means absolutely nothing. But let's dive into he and Sheppard, because they play the same position in this first segment, or they want to at the very least. So Stephon Castle goes number 4. Reed Sheppard went 3. Those type of players typically show out in the Summer League, or at least have the opportunity. They're given the opportunity to show out. And he's done that. He's been able to, and speaking of Castle in this case, Castle has been able to navigate pick and rolls, play with the ball in his hands, unlike how he played at UConn, where he was relegated at times to being a cutter, being a mid-post catch threat, someone who is a dare shooter. And you wondered, okay, how much of the ball handling does he truly have? That was the question, is like, how much of the facilitation, how much of the interior scoring can he do coming off a pick and roll? Can he punish teams who are going to go under? Well, he shot 18 of 25 at the combine. Like, these are all the narratives we heard for 6 months. We knew who the prospects were. We weren't that confident in their skill sets. A lot of the wings weren't good shooters, but they had plus size or plus athleticism. So Castle was kind of hindered by all this skepticism about, oh, maybe UConn maximized him. Oh, maybe Castle's an amazing point guard, but he didn't get a shot at UConn. So are we just betting on something that's not proven? Well, I think he showed pretty confidently that there's going to be a skill set that he has already and can cultivate even further, using all that size and strength that he uses to be a defender and an athlete at the very worst, that kind of drew comparisons to Josh Hart's and players of that ilk. And some people on the high side talked about that physicality, the ruggedness with like Jimmy Butler. But I mentioned this to you. One of my friends talked about kind of how Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is someone that he thinks has a similar path as someone who didn't have the ball that much at Kentucky. And then you give him the ball and he cultivates his skill set, and it takes him a little time to figure out how to be the scorer he is today. And it's not comparing him 1-to-1, but that's the skill set of a plus size guard who transitions to a point guard because he needs the ball in his hands, makes the team better, is a two-way scorer who's not necessarily a shooter. Despite Shea shooting so well from three and 90% from the free throw line, I still wouldn't classify him as a shooter. I think Castle's the guy that impressed me the most because I watch it to see how these players can impact an NBA game, not an NBA Summer League game. And so that's why I would one of the Summer League performers as well as one entering the NBA, just because I was impressed and I already was higher on him than some of the other guys.
Yeah, good point about winning in the NBA, not just Summer League, because you can see they make an impact in Summer League, but that doesn't always translate. I think it's a good indicator, but I mean, with Castle, I think he only played one game in Vegas, right? I think so. Yeah, I'm looking this up. He played one game in Vegas. He played 2 in the California Classic. He didn't need to be there. I mean, even when he wasn't shooting the 3-ball well, he was getting to the line. He was winning at the rim easily. Like, there's a lot of different things about him that I just think are such translatable offensive skills. And then also just his playmaking is really good. Like you said, he's a rugged guard. He can do a lot of the dirty work on both ends. He'll go places no player wants to go. If that makes sense, where it's like, you know, it's those spots where I might get hurt, or like not even like injured hurt, but like it might hurt is more what I'm saying. Like those kind of guys where guys shy away from that. Castle's not going to do that. He's a dog. I really do think, I mean, that landing spot's just perfect.
Oh,
like when, like, I'm not going to overreact and say like he could be the number one player from the draft because of Summer League, but like, I think that take is on the table. One, from what we saw in Summer League, and two, from I think it's good practice to do a post-draft board, knowing where people landed, because on a blank slate, it's like if Kel'el Ware landed in just a random team that doesn't develop well versus Miami, he probably on his redraft, or not like redraft, but like post-draft ranking, vastly different, right? So I do think Castle is somebody who we might talk about because of how perfect that landing spot is. Like I think he's going to impact the NBA so much from day one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Summer League, just to clarify the reason we say there's a difference between that and the NBA, and I know all those of you listening are obviously avid NBA fans, but the biggest differentiator to me is it's run and gun. It's AAU style of, you know, you run and take the ball. Who cares if you turn it over? The guys that are your guys are going to get shots, even if it's not in the flow of the offense. It's just premeditated. Like the best example of this, and I'm not trying to rag him, is Alex Sarr. He was the number 2 pick, so you're going to give him a bunch of shots. The shots weren't good shots. Like there was a few that were, but for the most part, they were bad shots. And I'm frustrated by that style of basketball, but that's why I try to take a very focused approach on this is the way that this player could play at the next level. And that's why I have a little more of a hesitation about Reed Sheppard. Let's dive into him right now. Sheppard, undeniably been excellent in Summer League. He's shot the ball really well. He's played with good pace. And what I mean by pace is not necessarily he's lightning fast, but he changes pace. He gets to places on the court using a change of pace, using a change of direction. He shoots the ball well, and that's obviously going to create gravity. I still haven't seen too much of the point guard playmaking chops that I would love to see if I'm a point guard, but the Rockets maybe don't need that as much because they have so many people who need the ball. But he's undeniably been great. What have your thoughts been on someone that you had higher than I did? Because I was notably low on Reed Sheppard.
Yeah, I love Reed Sheppard, man. I think I agree. He hasn't looked like a point guard, but he's looked like a good combo guard, if that makes sense. Like the best example is his last game. Is that yesterday now? Yeah, it's Thursday night. He had 7 assists. It's really good. He had 9 turnovers though. So like it's growing pains. And a lot of that was, I mean, there was one game where he had 7 and 2, but everything else was 2 and 4, 5 and 4. So like that ratio wasn't very strong except one game. And the one game actually, I think, was the Alex Sarr game, the 0-15, if I'm not mistaken. So actually, I think I am mistaken because that was 5 days ago. So that we did not have a week full of Alex Sarr going 0-15. Regardless, the big thing for me is, look, everybody wondered, will Reed Sheppard's defensive activity translate? And you can't say yes or no based on a 4-game sample size. I want to preface it with that. But I think the early returns say probably. I mean, in 4 games, he had 11 steals and 5 blocks. Like, that's insane. He's still averaging He's averaging almost 3 steals a game and 1 block a game. And if I'm not mistaken, that's actually pretty close to what he did in college. He averaged, I know for a fact, it was over a block a game. And I think it was 2.6 steals, it was 2.5 steals, 0.7 blocks per game. Pretty much, though, it's within the margin of error. That defensive activity of turning quick hands on defense to quick offense, super effective.
Yeah, I think the biggest part of my evaluation that I regret in Sheppard, and he made me regret it even in the summer league, is that when he's on a basketball court, good things happen. And I overlooked that to the point where I didn't believe in his ability at the next level to play point guard. And I said, well, we can throw all this stuff that was good away because Dillingham was the point guard and creating this. And Sheppard's defense, even though the good things were occurring, weren't necessarily translatable because he's going to be guarding people that are too big and are going to look at him and be like, oh, I'm going to score on this guy. I still believe that last part, that he's going to get scored on frequently and attacked and victimized in the pick and roll, but he makes good things happen. He's going to find a way to be successful, and he's a very bankable player. We'll continue talking about him. We got Kel'el Ware to talk about, Matas Buzelis, and a few other guys that we think have cracked the top 5. And then we're going to discuss the question, like I mentioned, how many of these guys do we feel confident would be redrafted in the top 5 that we have in the top 5 of the summer league? But first, I got to tell you guys about FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. I mean, Wimbledon just ended, and that was brutal for me because I was enjoying every second of it. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want them to, and all I have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers, including me, with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is also the official sports betting partner of the Major League Baseball, and baseball season's heating up. And I know Richard and I are baseball guys, so we're excited about that. I got one more question for you guys. Are you guys watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All righty. Welcome back to Locked On NBA Big Board. Leif Thulin and Richard Stayman here. We talked about Stephon Castle. We've talked about Reed Sheppard. I think the next standout, it has to be Kel'el Ware compared to draft position. He and Matas Buzelis for sure. That's the 15th pick for Kel'el Ware, and he's been the most consistently productive. Maybe not the flashiest game. That could have been Buzelis with 28. Buzelis was picked 11th. Both you'd say are early steals on the early returns. Let's talk about Kel'el Ware. You said you were critical of him. I've been critical of him at times. I even went back to when we were first kind of on the scene for this. It was, who are the All-Americans that you were the most confident in? Kel'el Ware was going to Oregon. And I remember talking to Rafael, and I was like, just something doesn't click for me on this guy. Like, he doesn't fill the boxes of like impacting a basketball game, even though he shoots the ball and he's 7 foot and he blocks shots. Like, that should be great. It's not. So I just have to see it to believe it. He goes to Miami. And I was like, well, that's as good a landing spot as there is. You mentioned that at the outset. What have you seen that's really sold you on the early returns? Because I don't think it's fluky at all that Kel'el Ware is thriving right now. I have confidence that he's going to be one of the better rookies in outperformance draft slot from the summer league. And I don't always feel that way from early returns on the summer league.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he just plays hard. Like it is a constant motor now. I've always been a you can't change your motor kind of person, and this is the first one where I can truly recall. And I think there are examples of bad motor that have turned out better, but I'm talking somebody like this is the lowest motor I'd heard. I think a lot of people point to like Ben Simmons and where he's at now, but that's not a motor issue where he's at now. And he eventually, like, it's tough when you're on a losing team, right? Like, those are always different. I think people perceive losing as motor and like that if, he just played hard, they would have won more, which isn't the case. Now, I want to just start with, I don't buy his jump shot still. Like, that never was the thing for me why I would have ranked him lower. Like, it's a bonus if he gets it. I don't think it's something where he has to have it. He'll be just fine without it. Like, he's so long and he uses his length well. and he looks comfortable rebounding the ball in traffic. He looks comfortable finishing in traffic. I really like what he's done. I feel like he's played a very smart brand of basketball, and it's something that's so easily translatable up against quality bigs, right? Yeah, he may struggle against like Joel Embiid. I know everybody loves pointing out the extreme when a big guy comes in the league and they're like, oh, well, can he guard Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic? Well, no, nobody can. But he'll do very well against that middle pack of the center and the other top bigs. Like, I think he's somebody you can comfortably put out there off the bench.
I believe in the offense enough for him to be impactful. I think he'll get really good shots. Sometimes they'll be dare shots, but Miami's going to have a really good offense. And I think you're even going to see him play minutes at the 5 with Adebayo at the 4. Like, we're watching Bam and the Olympic team play the 4 next to Anthony Davis, and he's been awesome. Like, knocking down open shots. I think Kel'el Ware is going to receive open shots because of the attention that's put onto Bam, onto Butler, and all these different guys. Nikola Jovic is going to receive different shots, and Ware can play with him as well. So I think their front court's going to be an interesting matchup. The reason I believe that his summer league is going to translate more than some other guys is the role is going to simplify. He's playing the star's role, other than Jaime Jaquez for the Heat, who's going to be shut down, is shut down. And he's playing a starring role. He's not going to play that starring role whatsoever in an actual NBA game. And all he has to do is play equally hard, which is easier to do when you're playing a lesser role, and protect the rim, rebound the ball, and shoot similarly. And now I understand the stakes are higher and there's going to be impact there. But if you were to draft this past draft on talent, Kel'el Ware is easily a top 5 pick. And that's why everyone says, including myself, G.G. Jackson should have been a top pick last year, because this year, if he were in the draft, he would have been a top 5 pick, maybe the number 1 pick, probably the number 1 pick. And that's why I was so high on him last year. Kel'el Ware is the same equation of, if you're to draft on talent and not necessarily the basketball or, motor and none of that stuff's evaluated, easily a top 5 pick. If he gets the talent sorted, plays in the right system, you got to believe it. So I'm really high on Kel'el Ware in terms of like how functional it will be early in his career. Maybe not the ceiling as some other guys. And now let's talk about a guy with ceiling here. Matas Buzelis. Both a guy we both were kind of having discussions at the combine. Like, well, I don't see his jump shot translating, but he's a functional athlete. He's got to go to a team that gives him the reins, and he's got to develop. But do you want to give the reins to a guy who's 6'10" and kind of plays upright? There's a negative discourse about Buzelis, but there's also the positive. He believes in himself. He's got this confidence. He played against pros. And so you kind of give him these excuses as well as these like upside reliant words, and not necessarily, immediately he can do this. Like, all the discussions, the discourse is all about the future. Well, Buzelis talked about how he thought he's better than Zachary Risashe verbally. He's performed admirably in such and such games. He scored 28 points, which is obviously the standout one. He's had a few inconsistent ones as well. What's your assessment of Buzelis then, also in regards to the future? How confident are you in that translating to the NBA?
Yeah, we still got to see what the jump shot looks like. I don't think, like, some of the concerns aren't just going to go away, right? Like, just because of summer league, he didn't shoot particularly well. 7 of 27 on jumpers in summer league. A lot of those off the dribble, and that's really where I have that concern. I've said that in multiple podcasts before. I also just don't think he sees the floor super well. And you know what, though? This was a prime example of how can he play when those issues are apparent and also still be playing well. This is what it kind of looks like. Now, how consistent will that be happening in the NBA? It's tough to say. He's going to be on an awkwardly built Bulls team that I think are going to tank eventually. I'm not super sold because they're in a very weird position. So who knows? But I think if they do embrace that tank race for the next year's draft class, which is loaded, and that is the right decision, by the way, I think Matas could be a guy who plays through those growing pains, and that actually ends up being a really positive thing for him. Again, it's just that jump shot needs to come along, and I'm not sold you can fix the floor vision decision-making combination kind of stuff where it's passing on the move, and when you're sprinting, can you see the whole floor and make the right read at the same time? Like, that's a really hard thing to grow into, but the jump shot certainly seems fixable, and the defense feels real. If you're 6'10" and you have that combination, you're going to be a starter. So I think there's a lot to work with there. Like you said, it's a lot about upside, but who knows how realistic a lot of that stuff is now.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. He's one I'd be a little more hesitant to say in the early years in his NBA career. I think the returns will be as like clear. The one I'm most confident in is Castle, and then of these guys we've discussed is Ware. So coming up next, we're going to talk about a few other guys that we think are honorable mentions or maybe in the fifth spot for best rookies in summer league, and then we'll talk about which guys we have the most confidence in other than Stephon Castle. And I guess in my case, Ware, we'll give Rich a few more players there. But first, we're going to take a quick break and be right back. All righty, welcome back to Locked on NBA Big Board. Leif Thulin and Richard Stayman with you here. We talked about Stephon Castle translating. We talked about Kel'el Ware translating. We've talked about Matas Buzelis and Reed Sheppard playing excellently in the summer league. Who are the candidates for that 5 spot or maybe an honorable mention that you want to say, like, wow, they've played great in the summer league? Because there's been a lot of standout performances. We talked about each of the top 11 guys, with the exception of probably Alex Sarr, have had a really good performance. Are you going that way? Or are you going kind of in the mid round? Because there's been a lot of good rookie performances, maybe not consistency wise. And that's why it's a difficult question.
Yeah, I need to look at Shay's stats again. I think he's not going to be my top 5, but he I don't know. The first game against Washington was really good. I was pretty impressed. The second game, not so much, but he only played 2 games, so I'm not going to put him up there. I actually think somebody who I know in a lot of the comments of past shows they want us to talk about, I'm going to give him a shout out. I watched back when after people are like, oh, you need to bring him up. And I watched him a little bit more closely on a game that I had watched. And I was like, okay, yeah, he made some shots. But Bobby Quintman actually looked pretty good in his game against, it wasn't Chicago. That was his bad game. Houston. It was against Houston. I thought he looked really good. So I want to give him a shout out. I think, man, if you're on the Miami Heat, you deserve a shout out too. Like that whole team was just loaded. Tristan Da Silva hasn't gotten much love because, I mean, if we're being honest, like Orlando just still even gets overlooked in a lot of ways. I think he's popular like on social media, but not super popular in like true media, if that makes sense. And I know we've kind of ignored him, even though I'm a Magic guy. Tristan Da Silva's looks like a pro. Like he looks like a 4-year vet who you're like, why is this guy still in summer league? He's not going to blow you away with any one skill, but he does things well, like shoot the ball, see the floor, and he connects the offense. So I really like those two. I would put them right on that just missed.
Yeah, those are good shout outs. I think Kashad Johnson would be one of those Heat guys that's really stood out, and he was a match made in heaven. I got to talk about my guy, Cody Williams, to the Jazz. Underwhelming Salt Lake Summer League, comes in, loud appearance, couple dunks on people in Vegas, entering the game against the Clippers, 17 and a half per game, and doing so quietly but extremely efficiently. Like his shot volume is not that of a top 10 rookie you'd typically see. Filipowski and Collier are taking more shots, yet Cody Williams is the one I'm certainly more excited about and more thinking, oh, you know what? That's the stuff he could do right away and down the road that he'll be good at. He attacks closeouts, hits the open shots, guards 2 through right now it's 2 and 3s, but I think there's a chance it becomes 1 through 4 because he uses his length, his finishing. We talked about this, and I made this pitch to Rich and James numerous times, both individually, on and off camera. Basically, what I think he needs to do to improve himself is add strength, and that further strengthens his rim finishing, which has been absurdly good in Vegas, both with standout dunks, finger roll finishes, ambidextrous finishes. It allows that strength allows him to become a better defender, better rebounder. Things I'd say are probably strengths in terms of defense, but not a good rebounder. I think it's going to help him as a finisher, which I already thought was a strength. I think it makes him a better shooter because it makes teams defend his drive more physically and allows him more space. All these things, I've been really impressed with just the way he's been able to impact the game and be so efficient as a player, playing alongside kind of more ball in hand, happy to shoot guys. And he's played the way that I expect him to play. And then you kind of have to look at the rest of it with context of what their team looks like. So Rob Dillingham is a guy that I had thought had a great performance, but then there's more players that have the ball in his hand. So he doesn't quite get top 5, even though I really believe in the upside. So let's transition this into which players are we the most confident in being if we're doing a redraft at the end of the next year based on what we've seen in the summer league, I know this is a hard discussion, but we'll make it difficult here. What players are we most confident that their summer league translates to success the next season?
Yeah, I mean, all the Miami Heat guys, I think that stuff's real. I had actually Kashad in my top 5 of rookies in summer league. Like, he was that good. I purposely left him off the honorable mention. He was that good. Now, if we're talking about guys, so you're saying at the end of next year that we're talking about, or
Yeah,
down the road?
if you were to say here are my 3 that I think will be all rookie guys next year because their summer leagues standing out to me, who are those guys?
All right, so all rookie is positionless, so this benefits me. I think Bub Carrington.
Oh, I totally forgot to talk about Bub. He's been, to me, I said he was the rookie of the year the other day.
It's okay. It's okay. We talked about him ad nauseum. Honestly, if you want to hear some of our Bub Carrington and Wizards talk, we've done a lot of episodes over the last week and a half. So feel free to check that out. Stephon Castle, Reed Sheppard. That's 3 locks. Volume is going to be the big one for Kel'el Ware. I think he's going to get it. The thing is, like, a lot of these other guys are going to start. Sheppard may not, but I think Sheppard's going to be just so dang good on a minute per minute basis. So that's 4. Putting that 5th one is tough. I think the safest outcome is with this guy is Tristan Da Silva. I think he's the easiest one to put there, but I don't know how comfortable I feel about not putting the top 2 picks up there, because Reed Sheppard will probably have an efficient year playing in a at least semi-winning team. Alex Sargent did get a ton of counting stats. So, like, I put those 5, but there's a lot of different guys in that mix. Those are the 5 that I feel really safe about. Buzelis, I think, depending on how, again, just what the Bulls do, is going to be a game changer. I feel like I might. I think that's probably it. Dalton Connects kind of struggled. I don't know how much I care about that, though. Like, this is tough. Tyler Kolek also. We haven't talked about him. He might be.
Kolek's been a baller.
I don't know if he'll actually get minutes, though. But when he plays, that man is going to be a unit playing behind Jalen Brunson. Like, he won't be all rookie. I think he'll get nice votes. Don't think he'll get it, but he's somebody, the deepest honorable mention I can give.
The last few games, I think he's got a 14-0 assisted turnover, scored 21 points, including a game-winning, like, hanging putback.
He's so good, man.
He's unbelievable. But I'm so happy you brought up Bub Carrington, because the last episode I talked about Bub Carrington. Like, I was espousing how incredible he is. I made a late push on him. I actually think in May I moved him into my lottery just before the combine. And then I ended up with him in my lottery. And I went on a Pittsburgh podcast talking about I thought Bub Carrington, after landing in Washington, had a really good chance. I'm very confident that Bub Carrington's going to be the better rookie between he and Sarr. And I said this before Sarr's 0-15 game. The reason being, if Tyus Jones isn't re-signed, I don't see a reason for Tyus Jones to be there in the long term, because they need to rebuild. So might as well give the reins to a youngster. You give him the best chance of having the ball the most, even more so than Castle, because Chris Paul's there. Not to mention, Bub Carrington is a mid-range. He makes all those shots in the mid-range. He's improving as a catch-and-shoot guy. He's improving as a finisher. He's not a great finisher. He's kind of like one of those silky smooth but doesn't have a ton of lift guys, but he's tall, sees over the defense, creates good shots. He'll make Sarr better. He'll benefit him. It'll benefit him to have Jonas Valanciunas setting him rock-solid screens. He'll hit off the dribble threes, which is the hardest thing in basketball to guard right now, is how do you guard a guard who is capable of hitting those threes? That's why Damian Lillard, Steph Curry are such revered shooters and offensive weapons, because of the way they score and stretch the defense. He does that at a higher level. So I'm so happy you brought up Bub, because I was thinking to myself, I'm missing someone. But I talked about him so much the other day, I just thought I mentioned him. So my top 5 would be Castle. I'm pretty confident in that one. Bub Carrington, Kel'el Ware, and then you get to the last 2, and I would go with Buzelis, because
I'm interested to see this 5th.
I think the Bulls are going to be bad enough where they give him enough chances, but that one I have significantly less confidence in. And then I'll say this. I think it'll be Buzelis or Reed Sheppard for the opposite reasons. Buzelis has a chance to boom. Reed Sheppard has a chance to be very safe. And then the 5th one, this is hopeful, but Cody Williams, I think, has a chance to, the way the Jazz direction is, I think he has a chance to improve a lot. I don't know if he puts up the volume, But so it's a little bit less certain, but the way he's played summer league gives me the most faith for him being good down the road. It may not be immediately in rookie year. I just have the most faith of the role he'll play and the clarity with what that role will be and the growth curve. I've seen him up close. I've watched all those games, and he's given me a lot to be optimistic about. So I'll throw him in as my last pick.
I like it. I think, I think Carrington's that kind of dude who, I mean, on draft night, I loved that pick.
That was
When you
great.
paired him, like, I thought just pairing him with Sarr and George was such a good play for everybody involved, where I think still Carrington's going to make those guys so much better. He's a prime guard you want in the scoring, in that upside development area, right? Where he can score for himself. It's really good to have him. He can also crash the board. He's aggressive. He sees the floor very well. He can run a pick and roll. And because of that, I hope that it's more rolls than pops for Sarr, but you can hit him in the pick and roll or pick and pop. And then you have as a skip pass option, Keyshawn George, not confusing at all having those two in the NBA now. But yeah, with Keyshawn George, I think that's a really nice skip pass option, or simply even just a threat to have as a driving kick option too. So I really like that roster. I'm big on what the Wizards are doing.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. Obviously, Sarr is being scrutinized right now. I think he needs to play the 5. Obviously, Valanciunas makes that a little harder of a proposition at the short term, but we'll see. These are the guys that we've thought have stood out in summer league. We have a little bit more optimism heading forward. I'm very curious to see how these guys do going into even preseason, what their roles will be early in the season versus late in the actual regular season, and that'll obviously make a headway into our discussion of like, okay, here's the early returns of the regular season. And coming up, I think we're going to have James, Richard, and I all on and do let's do a redraft after summer league. And I'm very curious because we have different drafting philosophies. How much is based on potential of what we saw at the summer league, and how much is, well, this guy played well, so we might as well put him there. So stay tuned for those. As always, we appreciate the everydayers for listening. And we want you to, with your next listen, to check out Locked On NBA. And the last thing I got to say is Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national show covering every league. Find every Locked On Sports Today, or every show that you can find on Locked On Sports Today, is all available on the free Fire TV channels app. So make sure to check that out. You'll see us. You'll see some other amazing shows and expert coverage at all of them. So we appreciate you guys. Stay tuned for the next couple episodes. We've got a few awesome ones planned out for you guys, and we appreciate you guys as always. Thank you.